excited because right over here in the back, we have Scott Hunter and Mike Harsh with Beth Massey. I want you to grill them all about .NET. Let's go to that right now.
Hey guys, this is Beth, and I'm the product marketing manager for .NET, and I'm here with Mike and Scott. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Mike Harsh. I'm a GPM on the Windows Platform team.
Scott Hunter, the director of PM on the .NET team.
All right, so we had some amazing .NET announcements today, didn't we?
Indeed.
Okay, so I think the number one on Hacker News all day has been the open sourcing of WPF WinForms and WinUI XAML library.
Yeah.
What the heck is that thing?
Okay, so yes, it's been trending on the number one spot on Hacker News all day, which has been awesome.
That's been fantastic.
I think there's like 225 comments already, so it's been awesome to see. So there's been some comments on Twitter too. So folks have talked about what is the story with UWP, why is that not being open sourced? So there's a little bit of naming confusion, and so I just want to straighten that out a little bit. So Windows UI XAML is the official name, what we're calling the UI stack that's in UWP. So the UI that is built into Windows for the UWP program model, we're calling Windows UI XAML. That name is actually reused. That is the name of the NuGet control package that we released to build, and that is what was the first part of Windows UI XAML that was open source today. That will be the project on GitHub that we eventually put all of the Windows UI controls and the rest of the Windows UI XAML framework into. And so timing-wise, that will kind of happen throughout 2019.
Okay, gotcha. So not everything is open right away, but as we make more code available in the coming months.
Is it primarily the controls?
Today, what's available is a set of the controls, and the things that are in the Windows UI library you get packaged today. Those are all open sourced, and then we're going to be rapidly adding more controls to that, and then a little more slowly, but still, hopefully in the next year, get all of the rest of the framework. So
the app layout itself will actually be there as well.
Yeah, and the layout engines, all of the data binding, all of the things that make a UI framework, not just controls.
Awesome, and I know this is like the one really big ask from the community, so it's really nice to see this happen today. So really exciting. Do we already have pull requests and everything actually? So
there's been some really interesting discussion. I've been paying a lot of attention to the WinForms repo. So I should admit, I started my first job at Microsoft in 2000 was as a PM on the WinForms team. So I worked there for about 6 years. So I have a lot of passion for the WinForms space, and so I've been really paying attention, very close, to that repo today. And there was, I think, two really interesting discussions. I mean, Oren had the first pull request that Scott did on stage. That was really cool to see. One kind of spontaneous thing that happened in the community today was some of the icons. So the WinForms had to work all the way down to Windows 98, and Windows 98 didn't have a built-in hand icon.
Okay.
And so there was a hard-coded resource, and that meant that you always got the hard-coded resources, and if they changed the system, you didn't get the new ones. And so there was a pull request to say, why don't we update this and not use the hard-coded one anymore, because .NET Core 3 works down to Windows 7. Obviously, Windows 98 hasn't been supported for a minute. And so that was a pretty cool thing to see. And then there's this other thing called the task dialog, which is it's a Windows feature. It's like a super message box. And there was basically a discussion around adding a new class for that to both WinForms and WPF, so you can get kind of a super message box. So it's already like the community's kicking in. Good things are happening.
That's
so
awesome. Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit about .NET Core 3 and it's supporting WPF and WinForms. It's pretty cool too, right?
Yes.
What's the big benefit of that, Scott? What do we get?
So when .NET Core was created, it was meant to solve some of the problems we learned over the years building .NET Framework. The primary one being, sorry for my voice.
I know you're sick as a dog.
The primary one being, how many .NET frameworks can you have on a machine? So we technically support 2 today: .NET Core 2, .NET Framework 2, and .NET 4X. 3.5 is actually a variant of 2. So there's always been only 2 versions on a Windows machine at a time. So one of the benefits you get with Core is obviously you can have as many cores side by side as you want. No longer do you have to worry about risking an application breaking because a framework changes.
I see.
And we don't try to break anybody's applications, but the reality is fixing a bug, maybe you depend on a bug and you don't know you depend on a bug. That happens. I mean, stuff just happens. We want to give customers more control. Another cool thing you get with .NET Core is you don't even have to depend on a framework being on the machine. You'll be able to actually take your WinForm WPF application, compile it down to a single exe that is self-contained. It contains the framework, your application, all of those things. And I think what it really means was, as a developer, you can decide to be on the latest version of a framework and not worry about IT having to go and update all the boxes.
So it's like Xcopy deploy for WinForms.
It is.
It's awesome.
And WPF.
And WPF, right.
And then there's one final other, big advantage, I think, and that is Core is where we will try new APIs. And so the latest, greatest APIs are in Core today. Some of the new C# features will only be in Core. So if you want to be on the bleeding edge of APIs, the bleeding edge of language features, Core is the place to be. That said, .NET Framework's not going away. It will never go away. I said this in my talk today. I'm like, it's part of Windows.
We have a lot of applications at Microsoft that rely on
got
products.
I have this app on my laptop called Visual Studio.
Visual Studio,
it's built
exactly.
on .NET Framework.
Who's ever heard of that, though, Scott?
Right. Who uses that?
So it's
Yeah.
but
really
the support
important to note.
it will be supported as long as Windows is supported.
Okay, so the idea is that .NET Framework itself is going to be safe and reliable and always supported on Windows.
Yes.
Okay, and that .NET Core will have more of the bleeding edge features. If you want to take something, you can deploy it with the app, so you don't risk breaking other applications, and so that's why we can move faster with .NET Core.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
And you can be on.
Okay.
There's two .NET Core trains. There's the LTS train, which is the long-term supported train, which about one of those comes out a year.
Okay,
And there's the I want the every other month bits,
got it.
faster track. So you can choose which track of Core you want. One app
What
can be
LTS are we on now? 2.1? 2.1?
2.1.
2.1, okay.
And
that
so
will
the
be
next LTS will be 3.1.
Okay, gotcha.
So we'll ship a 3.0 sometime in the July, August timeframe, I would hope, of 2019. And that means that the LTS build would show up somewhere in the October, November timeframe if we hit those dates.
So what about on the server side? I mean, we've got to have some improvements in .NET Core 3 for ASP.NET developers too, right?
That's the biggest misconception I think that people had. We were so heavily focused on talking about desktop at build this year.
Yeah.
We were so excited about bringing WinForms and WPF to Core that we didn't talk a lot about the server. The server is just as exciting as to me as the client side. One of the coolest features we're going to have is something that it was codenamed Blazor,
Okay, right.
and this was letting you actually write C# code in the browser. And this is not like fake C# code. This was actually the assemblies download and run in a sandbox.
This is the WebAssembly.
In the browser using WebAssembly.
Yeah, okay.
And we've been showing that for the last year or so. The first flavor of that will ship as part of Core 3 as well. It'll be part of ASP.NET Core 3. Your code will actually run on the server, but the programming model is still the programming model where it appears that you're writing C# in the browser.
I see.
Inside of the HTML, inside of that.
So you write, they're called Razor components, right?
Razor
so you
components.
create UI,
Yes.
all in C#, and so you have a full stack web development with C#.
Full
you don't have
stack.
to write JavaScript at all.
You don't have to rely on Angular, React, Vue. You don't have to write JavaScript. I mean, we're not trying to. This is not a war against JavaScript.
No,
This is
I love C#.
use the skills
so
that you have. If you have a lot of C# skills and you want to use those in the browser, bang, you can now use those in the browser.
It's, context switching sometimes too, I mean, I think that's why the appeal of Node, Node.js, because you're just using JavaScript on both sides, right? So these C# developers can enjoy that as well. I think that's fantastic. Actually, there's a question here that kind of relates to ASP.NET. Are there any modification requirements to move ASP.NET MVC Core 2 project to Core 3? Can it be done now?
So the best way to answer that question would be we just shipped ASP.NET Core 2.2 today as well. So not only do we have the 3.0 announcement,
Right.
We just had the 2.2 announcement. What I would tell the customer is they should move to 2.2.
2 first. Okay.
All we did for 3.0, the 3.0 build that came out today, basically has the exact same ASP.NET Core 2.2 bits
I see.
that shipped as part of 2.2.
Okay.
So there's no benefit to move to 3 yet. Won't be till not later this year, sometime next year.
Wow. Preview 1 comes out quick.
Sometime next year,
Okay,
we'll
gotcha.
start having the next innovations beyond the 2.2 stuff. They'll start showing up in the 3.0 bits. But today, your best bet is to stay on 2.2.
But we aren't anticipating any major changes that you would have to make to
Our
move.
goal is to make it as
Okay.
easy as possible to move. I mean, there'll always be some breaking changes. 2.0 to 3.0 there's some breaking changes. We assemble the product differently than we did before. I mean, if you're an ASP.NET customer, the ASP.NET frameworks have traditionally come as NuGet packages. And so there was .NET Core, and then there was ASP.NET Core, which was kind of separate.
Okay.
Now we're shipping the whole thing as a monolith again. That's to enable a bunch of cool scenarios. We have partners like Red Hat that have a version of .NET Core they ship. We want ASP.NET Core to be part of that. So it all has to be built from
Gotcha.
source.
Okay,
So
that makes sense. Cool. So how will we acquire, is the WinForms and WPF? Is that going to also be like NuGet packages, or how is that going to work?
You just go download the 3.0 SDK
And it'll be in there.
type .NET New WinForms,
Perfect.
and you're good to go.
Good, great. So you're going to show a little demo of this?
I can do a little
actually?
demo.
I'm
think
kind
you're
of
gonna be
intrigued.
Porting a WinForms app here.
I'm
So
gonna see
you're
if
going
I-
to take a WinForms app on Framework, and you're going to port it to Core.
Yeah. So I've got and first off, I need to also preface, Preview 1 is pretty rough.
Okay.
We knew it was going to be rough.
Okay.
We primarily focused on the actual runtime. So most of the work has been done in the Core 3 runtime. The tooling is a little bit behind us,
Okay.
meaning that File New in VS 2019 does not have WinForm for Core or WPF for Core.
We'll have more previews. It will get
We will have
better.
more previews.
Okay.
We don't have visual designers
Okay.
yet, but I'm going to show you how you can actually build a Core project and actually use the designers from the full framework application. So if you go look at my laptop, I've got Visual Studio 2019 here, which is required for Core apps, Core 3 apps. And if I run it, this is a memory matching game. You know, you keep clicking these things until you find the ones that match, and you click through. And so we thought, hey, let's port this to Core. So it's going to be a little crazy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, and my command prompt, and I'll do .NET New WinForms, and I'll say output. We'll do matching game Core. So that basically builds me a skeleton of a WinForm application on Core. So let's go back to our solution, and we'll go add that existing project. So now we have a Core WinForm app in here. And if I set it in my startup project, it runs and builds. Hello .NET Core. Woo.
Awesome.
But really what I want to do is I want to get that game running over here. So I'm going to cheat a little bit.
Okay.
So one of the features we've had in Core for a long time is our project system is pretty cool. That if you look on the screen here, I've got the forms, the program CS, and whatnot. If I look at my project file, they're not in the project file.
Just points to the folder.
It points at the folder, and we glob in all the C# files. I can also have it glob in from somewhere else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I'm going to go take all the code. Let's just erase it. And then let's go back and open that CS project again. And I've, just for, we don't screw this up on stage, just paste some code over here. And what I'm going to basically do is paste in a item group that tells the system to basically include files from a particular folder. So in our case, we'll just erase this. There you go. So as I save that, notice that all the files from the full framework app just showed up in the Core app.
Cool.
That's pretty cool.
So I'm cheating. I'm aliasing into the existing project.
I see.
So any code changes I make to these files happen in both the full framework and the Core application.
Scott, good engineers don't cheat, they're efficient.
So now the next thing is, if I build this, I'm going to see a couple of errors. So let's do a build. And first off, as I get a duplicate type, assembly company attribute. And that's because in a .NET Framework application, we typically have a properties app with an assembly info.
Okay.
In Core, we said, why have a file that was basically a place to put metadata? We said in Core, let's put the metadata in the project file. And so what's happening is, in this particular case, .NET Core is trying to dynamically generate one from the project file, and so there's two of these things.
They
I
conflict,
see,
yeah.
and they're conflicting.
So we'll tell it to generate assembly info. False. Better. Now, my matching game uses this game logic, and I need to reference that as well. So I'll just come over here, we'll add a reference.
So you're basically switching project systems, and so you're kind of doing some manual changes around the
Yeah.
project system itself,
got
but
it.
not the source code.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
the source code's all the same. Now that reference is there, and now I've got the exact same app running on Core.
Cool.
And it works just the same as it did before.
Okay, so that's a little manual because we don't have all of the tooling yet, but as you can see, guys, you can take some of your apps that you have today and you can see if they're running on core and how they perform and that kind of thing.
And the
right, to test
repos
now.
have instructions on how to do this
Cool.
for both WinForms and WPF.
Great.
And also, if you hit more than just project system issues, you can use the API port tool to find out which APIs
Right.
aren't
Supported.
aren't supported currently. And the set of APIs that's going to be in 3 isn't fully baked yet too.
Right.
So if you open an issue with the API, we can take a look at that and add that back.
If you look at my gaming logic DLL or assembly, if you look, I actually had a porting problem, and because I had a porting problem, you can see that I installed the Microsoft Windows Compatibility Pack. That's a NuGet package. So .NET Core by itself it was designed to be cross-platform, which means we can't ever put Windows-specific things into .NET Core.
Yep.
So we have a NuGet package we put out a while ago in the 2.2, or actually the 2.1 timeframe, I think. And what it does is it basically brings a lot of Windows things back. It brings registry back, brings directory services back, system management back. And so if you try to port some of your code and you find APIs missing, the first thing to look at is go and grab this NuGet package, stick it in. In my case, the game actually saved your high score in the registry.
I see. So
And so I
needed
brought
that
this in to
API.
use the registry.
Okay, got it. All right, so that's good. That's cool. So there's another interesting announcement and feature about .NET Core 3 that I wanted to ask you about. These things called XAML islands.
Yes.
Yeah.
XAML Islands. So XAML Islands is a Windows feature
Okay.
that first shipped in the release that I think is just starting to roll out now. Internally, we called it Redstone 5. I forget what the actual official name is
Okay.
because the marketing team picks forgettable names on purpose. It's just Windows 10. And there will be some additional improvements on that feature that are coming out in the spring release for Windows. But basically, the idea is you can take a piece of Windows UI XAML, a control, and you can embed it in a WinForms or WPF app or anything with really an HWind. It's effectively an HWind host.
Okay.
And then you can start to use new UI features. That's what Scott Hanselman showed on stage today with the signature control. That's the ink canvas and the ink toolbar from the Windows UI XAML library, and just plop that into an existing app. So that's what that feature is all about. And that works in both .NET Core 3 apps as well as .NET Framework apps.
Cool. So basically, you're saying I could take my app and slowly take a onesie twosie approach to
Yes.
moving it to Windows 10.
Yes, I mean our goal here is to really bring all these platforms together. So you can use any feature in any app type, regardless of where you started from. You shouldn't think of them as different platforms. It's just one set of APIs you can choose from based on what you want to do.
So I can get a modern browser in my WinForms app now.
That's right.
Okay.
That's very similar to that concept. Is very similar to what we did in ASP.NET years ago. We called it one ASP.NET, which was, hey, you might start with a web form application, but you want to add MVC or you want to add SignalR. Well, now we don't care if you start with a WinForm app, a WPF application. You want to go add a XAML UI control. Boom, just do that, right? Just choose the UI tech that you're comfortable with,
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
and get all the features.
Or have a giant code base in it. You obviously don't want to either start from scratch or rewrite
Correct.
large things if you don't want. If you
I
don't
think
have to.
WinForms is like 2002, right? I mean, it started from the beginning.
2002.
And then WPF was like 2007, 8. So these apps are probably about that old.
They've got some good vintage to them.
Yeah, but they're probably business critical.
A lot
And
of them are.
they have to be modified and they have to be updated.
But there's still a lot of people, actively doing WinForms and WPF development. There's, over 1 million monthly active WinForms developers.
Yeah.
I think it's 2 million.
I think it's more than that. But so do we get like performance benefits as well as part of being on the core runtime?
So you will get some performance benefits, primarily in the standpoint that we've, obviously ASP.NET Core, .NET Core performance has been a big push with us. You've seen us take the web stack and be in the Tech and Power benchmarks, and as a result of that, there's been features added to the language span. There's been modifications to some of the BCL to make some of those results happen. You might ask, well, why didn't you make those same changes into .NET Framework? Well, the reality is, like, we changed some of the file APIs to fix bugs that were in .NET Framework, but I can never put it in .NET Framework because it would break stuff.
I see.
And so there are API improvements. Also, .NET Core is open source, so anybody can contribute. And so maybe something is too small that we would not look at, but somebody makes a performance fix from the community, and we accept it. So you will find that Core is going to be a little faster than .NET Framework.
Yeah, so kind of a discussion going on Twitch right now, what we should kind of address maybe. So how does UWP fit into kind of all of this? You kind of started to say like before what the XAML library is. How does this whole thing kind of fit together with UWP?
So you should really think about basically if you have a WinForms UWP application and you're happy with that and you want to add some new Windows 10 features to a desktop app and you have an existing desktop app, you can start adding those features. I mean, there's many of the WinRT APIs you could use already. With XAML Islands, we kind of closed most of the gaps of things that you can't use in an existing application. If you want to build an application that is fully top to bottom brand new and modern, you can start with the UWP application. There's a lot of investment we're doing in the UI stack there to kind of address some of the gaps that customers have told us about for building line of business applications. Like shore up some of the data story and form validation that we're actively working on. But the real reason that you would pick a UWP to start with, especially if you're building a new application, is you can target other Microsoft devices. So if you want to go build an app on Xbox or Surface Hub, that's your route for that.
Got it. Okay. So XAML Islands are really desktop related only. Got it. Okay, that's very cool. Cool. All right. So want to talk about a couple more announcements, Scott?
I want to show one more demo real quick. Give me 1 second.
Wow. 2 demos from Mr. Hunter.
Well, we showed before. We showed making that game.
Yeah.
Using WinForms.
Uh-oh. Is this going to be in a browser?
Let me shrink this so it fits on the screen for everybody. We also took that same game. It just happened to be that that game was written in a great way where all the logic of the app was written inside of that game logic assembly or class library. So it was very easy to go take the same UI and build it in the web. And so I shared that same project. It's a .NET Standard 2 class library. I shared it across a Blazor app. And here I have the same game running in the browser.
Oh, that's so hot.
That's cool.
That's so hot.
So,
wow.
I thought I would just show that is the goal is, whatever UI you want to build, whether it's desktop UI or web UI, Core is going to be a great place to be for that.
That's cool. And we keep innovating and bringing in more workloads there. Like we have ML.NET as well for machine learning and AI.
We've been doing a lot of work for IoT. Azure IoT runs on some .NET Core stuff. And so in the blog post on .NET Core 3 today, we talked about getting serial port access in IoT for Linux.
We're going to do some fun IoT stuff today,
too. So there's crazy stuff all across .NET.
That's very cool. So actually, let's ask, here's a question from No Content, really cute handle, I like that. Will .NET Native also become for WPF and WinForms now since it's on .NET Core? So you want to talk a little bit about what .NET Native actually even is there,
sure.
Mike?
Yeah, so .NET Native is the ahead-of-time compilation story that UWP apps use today. And so if you're super familiar with it from developing, there's definitely some quirks around it because it basically looks over all your code and basically ahead of time compiles it to x86 or ARM. There's some features in .NET like reflection. If you don't have a type there that's already been generated, you basically will kind of get a missing method exception. There's some bad things can happen there. On the flip side, you do get a bunch of great performance out of it. So it is a very interesting story, but I believe that Scott can talk about the AOT story for .NET Core is going to go in a slightly different direction, I believe.
Yeah, we haven't really announced that direction, but I will talk what you said, which is a great point. As we started building the WebAssembly work, that's the Blazor stuff. You need an AOT solution, and do we use .NET Native or do we use something else? Currently, the Blazor work uses Mono actually.
Okay.
Because that runtime had more support for WebAssembly types of things. The one thing we want to be very good at, we want to be very clear about is when we do a new native implementation, we'll do it where .NET can be .NET all the time. Like Mike said, .NET Native made some sacrifices for security and performance by removing parts of .NET. Whatever we do in the future, we'll give you an AOT ahead of time compile that actually runs all of your .NET code. So it might mean that we have to use an interpreter along with some of the native code.
I see.
But I want to make sure that whatever .NET we give you is the full .NET. And then if you want to go dial some of it down, if you want to go turn reflection off for security reasons or size of device or whatever, you can do that. But because you made the decision to do that, you understand that
I see.
there's less compatibility there than there was before.
No surprises, basically.
But I don't think the AOT wave will be after the .NET Core 3 wave.
Okay.
So we'll ship .NET Core 3 with Blazor running on the server side, and hopefully we'll start previewing some of the AOT stuff after that.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I think to close the question a little bit for no content there, basically we want to make sure that the AOT story that we develop for Core also applies to UWP. So you have, again, all this is about having a consistent .NET story everywhere, and we want to make sure that we kind of close that gap.
We've slowly been trying to get to what we call one .NET, which is one set of compilers, one set of garbage collectors, one set of jitters, one set of APIs.
I see.
You'll continue to see us shrink and share stuff more and more across the various runtimes. Today the runtimes would be Mono, .NET Core, .NET Framework, and native.
Gotcha. So and because open source has really kind of changed that culture, so now we can actually kind of do this now, right? I mean, before it wasn't possible.
Certainly
really.
easier.
Certainly easier.
But it takes, AOT is hard, so it'll take some time.
It'll take some time. Cool. All right. By the way, Skull Crusher for life, you are awesome. Did he just build that demo while in the middle of the session? Nice. So that's shout out to Scott. Nice job, dude. One more question here. Can I now use WPF and/or WinForms from PowerShell Core and/or on Linux or Mac?
So I don't actually know how to answer the PowerShell Core question. The Linux or Mac is so basically WinForms and WPF still rely on a bunch of Windows APIs for input, output, for drawing, and so those are still Windows desktop only components. So we have nothing more to share there as far as announcements.
Okay.
I'd like to add to that, though. People ask this question all the time. It's like, we've been talking about .NET Core 3 and desktop for a while, and it's like, hey, are you going to make WPF cross-platform? Are you going to make WinForms cross-platform? I don't really think you want a WinForms app looking like a WinForms app on a Mac or a Linux machine. So I think we haven't decided, or even the industry has not decided yet, what the best cross-platform UI story is. And so while it sounds great to say WinForms could run on a Mac user would go, why do I have this weird X in the window?
Look right. Yeah.
I don't have the dots over on the left side. That doesn't feel like they match.
Why did you make my Mac look like Windows 95?
Like a Windows 95. It would be. It'd make a Mac look like Windows 95. So I don't think these are the right technologies for that. I don't think Microsoft today has a story on what cross-platform UI is. That's something that Mike and I would love to work on in the future, but we're not there yet. And so but yeah, these are Windows tech. I think for the PowerShell one, that PowerShell core runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So, yeah, you could probably call some.
I mean, there's probably a bunch of types. Like if you wanted to go use a system.drawing rec, you could there's a bunch of types that don't actually have UI backing. I'm sure you could use inside, but if it's going to basically if it's WinForms, if it's going to do anything HWin related or do a p-invoke,
that's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
Cool. Okay, makes sense. Okay, how close is .NET Core to build self-contained executables? Is it similar to Golang? That's a good question.
Yeah, so that's kind of a long roadmaps discussion again. So what we'll do in the 3.0 timeframe is we will give you we'll have some technology we have that will basically take the assemblies that make up your application and compact them into a single exe.
Okay.
It still is all those individual components. They're just packaged better
Okay.
into a single exe for you.
Okay.
The Go question is more of, are we going to provide native exes on those platforms? And that comes back to the AOT story we talked about earlier for WebAssembly and for .NET Native.
Right.
And what ahead of time compile AOT is something we are definitely looking at post the 3.0 wave.
Okay, great, exciting. All right, so one more question here. Are you going to enable application domains and DLL unloading?
So app domains is a good one. That is something that obviously, as we've been working with partners to port their WPF and WinForms apps, it's come up, and it's pretty rare that people actually need this kind of process level isolation like features, but there's some APIs on app domain that are useful, and so we're working to create an app domain class that has a lot the kind of API functionality that more or less, but doesn't actually have the kind of code isolation of an app domain, but it has some of the additional features that we found people using.
Okay.
From that perspective.
Yeah, a lot of customers use app domains today to load extensions, and like even Visual Studio, I'm sure using app domains when you install some other extension into Visual Studio. It lets them load some third-party DLLs into the application, and you can unload them, We're going to build a new library on top of core for doing that.
Very cool.
It won't be app-domains. App-domains actually combined a whole bunch of random stuff together, and some of it didn't work very well. And so we don't want to bring the stuff that didn't work very well forward into core.
But like just to stitch those two things together, that we we could make an app domain API shell basically, or shim, that would use the it would do the loading and unloading, but so it would be API compatible with your existing code, but then could call the new better functioning actually APIs under the covers.
But we'll give you the same functionality that most people want to use it for, which is loading extensions. We're building a new API right now for that.
Cool. Awesome.
And as a general shout out to any API questions, the best thing to do is to use API port on your code, and either send us a report or share that via a GitHub issue, so we can keep track of these things, because now that we have a public place to keep track, it really helps us steer the roadmap.
Yeah, we had a blog post about. Unfortunately, I don't know it off the top of my head, the URL, but we had a blog post, I think in August, that Alia on the team put up, and we actually had a tool you could actually run and just point it at your exe, and it would basically look at the APIs and all. So you felt safe. It would show you the output of what it was going to send, and then you would press send. It sends us the APIs. That information helps us a lot to know what APIs to port.
Okay, so that we can take a look and say, hey, we know a lot of people use API X, we're going to support API X.
And it's anonymized too. It basically just says these APIs this many times, not necessarily what you use them for, or any variable names or anything like that.
Gotcha.
So
okay, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Privacy scrubs.
Let me throw a question in, just myself off of this, just because it's a common question that people
Would you like
ask.
to host the next session?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Another one that comes up a lot is, what is our story for WCF? I thought, before I wait for it to show up on the screen, I thought we just talk about
Let's
it a
talk
little
about
bit.
WCF.
A lot of .NET Framework applications are using WCF, or they're using .NET Remoting. We're not bringing either of these technologies to core at this point, but we are looking at alternatives. There is gRPC, which is an RPC model, which is very similar to a remoting or a WCF model.
Okay.
And so the ASP.NET Core team is working with the gRPC project themselves to make that thing have first-class .NET support, and actually make it like it feels very similar to like an ASP.NET or something else would. So we're looking at that.
Okay.
And we're also potentially looking at the parts of service model, which is the guts, the low-level bits of WCF that we could bring forward without bringing all of WCF. So we're looking at various angles of how do we solve the RPC problem, because it's a valid concern, and we need to have one on .NET.
That's a good point. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about the .NET Foundation announcement today before we have a little bit of time here?
Of anybody that should talk about the .NET Foundation announcement, the chairman of the .NET Foundation should probably talk about this.
So today.
Was that a self-serve there?
I just thought we were talking about .NET. Let's talk a little bit about the .NET Foundation, and I think who better to talk about it than us, because we're on .NET. So one of the announcements was about the governance model changes. Okay, yes. So basically expanding the board from 3 to 7 people, and 6 of them being able to run. Anybody that has contributed anything to any .NET Foundation project can run or can vote. I think that's going to let the foundation really scale its efforts more, right? So why does this, why do I care as a developer? Well, you care about your platform. You care about the longevity of your platform and the size and the health of your ecosystem, right? So that's kind of what the foundation is about in general, right? It's that center of gravity for open source around .NET. And if we have more people that have a stake in that and are volunteering to do something they're passionate about and help move that forward, we're only going to have more growth and more success with the platform. So that's how I took it. And yes, I am the appointed member on the board from Microsoft. So I have huge passion in this area. So I think that's going to be like a fantastic new era for .NET.
Well, I think another big point in the .NET Foundation is, historically, if you look at the last couple of years, the .NET Foundation feels more like the Microsoft .NET Foundation.
Yeah.
And what the governance model really is about making it equal for everybody. There's only a single Microsoft representative that has to be in the foundation. The rest of it is community elected. So it is not heavily tilted towards Microsoft. The foundation historically has also been funded by Microsoft, and it's going to go to a self-fund cycle as well. So it's going to become more of a independent foundation that's run by the community, and not something that you could interpret the older version of the foundation as more of a Microsoft-run thing.
Right, and I think there's rules in there where only 2 max, I think, board members can be from the same company, so you can't stack.
So you can't stack or anything.
Yeah. So that makes it even more open, more fair, and get better. The idea is to get more ideas as well from other companies as well, and
to be more open, to be more less Microsoft. I mean, we're riding this open source wave, and we want the .NET and the .NET Foundation to be as open as possible.
And I think there's just a lot of things that we can do, right? When we have that, extra money, we have those extra bodies, we can scale more, we can have, different types of
Tackle more
events,
problems,
we can help, help our community do the things they really want to do too. So I think that's pretty cool. So
I'm excited.
I'm
hey,
excited.
It's been staying on the front page of Hacker News all day as well. So the community must
that's
be
actually
excited
pretty
too.
exciting. Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited about that.
So are we worried about voter fraud for any of the positions?
We only use .NET for that, so you're fine.
Okay.
So there is a question here. So there looks like they're having a discussion of what are the benefits of joining the board. So that's actually a really good question. And when Scott asked me, I was like, first of all, why me? And then I was thinking about it. Really, though, it's a volunteer position, and you really are about directing the platform, directing the ecosystem. It's really about making choices that are going to benefit .NET. And when I say .NET, I mean the platform itself as well as the community around the platform. So that's kind of why you would join the board. You have some passion around .NET open source, and you want to help the community. And that's how I see it joining the board. I am excited. I have some ideas, and I can't wait to see who else is going to be on that board. So elections will start in January. So yeah, if you guys want to run, we'll have all the information on the .NETFoundation.org website about that. So that's very cool.
Cool.
Are you going to run?
I guess we have one more slot from Microsoft,
You have one more
right?
slot for Microsoft.
I'll have to
yeah.
see the competition. I don't.
Awesome. Cool. So we got a couple more questions here. Let's go ahead and say, any plans for UI automation for Core or UWP?
So we do have UI testing for UWP and for Windows apps with WinApp Driver. I'm assuming you're actually talking about the UI automation class, though.
I'm assuming that's
it would
what
be.
the question
I'm not sure. There's a bunch of different scenarios that UI automation. It can be used for accessibility tools. It can be used for testing. It can be used for actually doing some other scripting of scenarios. So I think I don't think there's any plans right now for any of the frameworks to have UI automation, or at least in UWP. But it would be really interesting to know what the scenarios they're looking for, because that's the thing that we probably have a good answer for based.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you guys want to say to the .NET community out there on Twitch before we wrap it up?
Big thing is download .NET Core 3, try the bits out, give us feedback. I mean, the reality is this is preview 1. I said it was really early, really raw, but we have like 10,000 people that ran that tool, showing us what APIs they needed. What we need is more people to try it and give us feedback.
Well, and definitely go download .NET Core 2.2, which is released today. So make sure you get on those new bits. So thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Scott.
Great. Thank you,
All right.
Beth.
All right. Thank you.